Hello, here we are again with Mookie Tenembaum. We are exploring through these videos his disillusionism, his philosophy, and his misogynistic theory about human behavior as a way of avoiding suffering. And week after week, as many of you already know, we are trying to analyze bits and pieces of everyday life, of current affairs, from a philosophical point of view, in order to illustrate some of these more abstract concepts we've been dealing with. We are now in mid-November 2021, still amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And today we are going to analyze the issue of privacy and all the arguments around privacy, violations of privacy, the preservation of privacy that are taking place today and been taking place for a while, I would say, since the World Wide Web and social media became prevalent in our societies. But we are going to try and have a disillusionist take on this matter of privacy.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about privacy, you said the violation of privacy. The word to violate is a very, very serious word. But that's how people that's how people talk. But we also understand that, as we said in the last week video, we live in a hyperinflationary adjective pandemia, in which we keep on, there's a competition who makes a bigger noise, whose epic is more epic. So suddenly privacy is violated. Well, we know that violence has to do with something much more serious than a company, Google, getting my IP. And I think violations, it's a big word. But let me begin with an example. At the beginning of the pandemic, when the vaccines started to be a reality, the state of Israel got an agreement with Pfizer. And the agreement was the following. First, you will pay double what cost the vaccine instead of the rest of the regular price. Israel said, of course, yes. And the second one, you will give me all your data about the people who were vaccinated, anonymously, obviously, but all of it. That means you will take it and give it to you. You give it to us. Of course, Pfizer had two reasons. One, scientific, of course, to get information about how well the vaccine is performing. And the other one, of course, is market-oriented, and that is to make people, to get more clients and their stock going up. Yes, I mean, it was clear that was the idea. And in fact, I would say it worked quite well. At the beginning of this process, you heard very few voices shouting, "Hey, I don't want my." They should ask me if I want to give out my data, my private data. It's mine, and I give it to the state of Israel so they know about me, not so somebody else will get. But that was very few people, because at that, let me remind you, there were no vaccines at the beginning. Pfizer gave them to Israel, and Israel became a huge lab where you run the experiments that they kept, and with the booster they did the same thing. So Israel got the first one who got the boosters, the first one who got the vaccines. That was the price. But started people now, or nowadays, people are getting very nervous. We know in general about privacy, not only the case of Pfizer. People are afraid with Facebook. When there is a hack on a certain place, you have, for example, you can have a problem with Google getting your data. So many companies. In fact, Biden is now trying to work to limit the right of people to buy weapons by using data of people who got the weapons. Yes, data so people who bought a gun, their name is now in the hands of the feds. It's legal, of course, 100% in the meantime, but that data is not anonymous. That data is data, is full data. Okay, now the question is, Florencio, why will somebody have a problem to share, first of all, the anonymous data, and second, not anonymously. I mean, why is that a suffering?
I think there are at least two lines of discussion here that are quite interesting, and we are tapping on them parallelly. On one side, we have the differences between the types of information that are being violated or being taken. I agree with you, it's not the same thing to have anonymous information, to have statistical information, than to have, as you said, my personal IP, my personal history of searches on the internet. So there are different types of information at stake here, and there are different types of suffering on the other side, right? When you mention people who claim they should be paid for the information, this is one type of suffering. It's the suffering of being left without a resource that they think they are entitled to. And maybe there's another type of suffering here that's more psychological in its nature. I think it's tricky, it's difficult to understand. It might be shame, it might be fear of some consequences in the future. I think that the misalgic end of this illusion of privacy is a very interesting one to discuss.
But there are many reasons why people don't want their data to go out. A personal could be. I am sure that if I had a mistress, yes, I wouldn't appreciate that, but my wife will get the information. Yes, for example. So there are certain things that are totally legal. We're not talking about drug dealing. Yes, that are legitimate, and you don't want maybe in countries like Brazil or Mexico where people are kidnapped to know how much money I make. There are real practical reasons, but we're not talking about them because in the case of Pfizer, for example, or in similar cases, your name is not out there. Nobody knows who is the person who are one of the 10,000 people who have a kidney tumor. It's not, and that means that another part of the reasons not to try to avoid their privacy being infringed, because that would be the word infringe.
Yeah.
Yes. One other reason could be because it has a monetary value in their minds, and here I go, in their minds, because your data by yourself value is zero. Zero. The only value is statistical, and statistical, as we know, it doesn't matter if there is an exception. It's totally irrelevant. So the question is this: you mentioned shame, okay? And there is shame, and this, it's prudity. Just I don't want them to see me to see how fat I am. I don't want people to see how do I brush my teeth. I don't know. Or when I brush my teeth, or if I brush my teeth. So there is a question of your relationship with the rest of the people. So there is privacy of me with me. I don't want to show certain things that are mine. There is privacy towards third parties who will see it, may see it in a negative view, and then there is a privacy that really a fear right. that it's 1 out of a million or 1,000 or 10,000. It is irrelevant. Still, people are bothered with it, and you see it all over the place.
I guess going back to the basics of the theory, if people are suffering because of this, then we have to take it into an account, even if it's so diluted, even if it's so far-fetched that it has no real consequences. At some point, we have.
When you talk about an abstract suffering, if somebody says my leg hurts, end of argument. There is nothing else to talk about. Period. It shouldn't. Your leg looks good. Why should it? But when we're talking about privacy, it's something that happens in your brain. When you sleep, you don't worry about privacy because you're sleeping. Okay, so you have to be not only not sleeping. You have to be out of the sleepwalk. You have to be totally, and only then in your brain you think this is important. But those are the sufferings that can be changed once the interest that's being hidden or that's being defended is shown to be useless, not important. Okay, somebody wants wants that share. The share you are going to throw it to the garbage. Take it. It's almost that, because it has no value, zero value by itself. So the moment you know it doesn't have any value, the moment they know that it is totally diluted, like with the vote, again, talk about the voting. Yes? That means if they do have any information or if they don't, you don't care. But when it's personal thing, when it's 1-to-1 or 1-to-5, or people in my egosphere, people I know, people I can do something about it, then it makes sense. But we are not talking about that when we talk about privacy today. The definition of privacy has been expanded so far that everything now is a threat to you.
I think we've heard enough cases about people's careers and personal lives being ruined or seriously damaged because this and that bit of personal information got published and was seen. And I think there, as you said before, we have real reasons to keep things private, but we are discussing now big data. We are discussing now these huge amounts of information in which, as we said last week, I guess, with the boat and other examples, my part is so diluted, it's so tiny that it's completely irrelevant. And in fact, it's not sine qua non. In fact, I'm out of the study, if I'm out of the search engine's history, this won't make a difference, neither for Pfizer nor for Google. What's the threat here? And what's on the other side? My guess is, you mentioned this before, I think. Am I afraid I don't count? Am I afraid I amount to almost nothing if my vote gets so diluted, if my information is so irrelevant? Is this the other side of the coin in this matter?
Well, to be confronted with irrelevancy is quite hard, yes? It is also quite hard when we in disillusionism say there is no why. Why there is there is no why. That's it. There is no cause. It's a totally causeless situation. So when you have a person who feels that he or she are irrelevant, they try to say, no, but look, they're taking my data. And the truth is that you have to make a decision. What do you want to be? Notorious or irrelevant? And that's the real, that is, it is, I would tell you, to a point, this is a narcissistic point of view. Like somebody's looking for me. You remember, of course, we all remember the story of the Bill Gates and the chip. Yeah. Listen, Mookie Tenembaum is not that important that Bill Gates wants to be able to control. Okay, so the idea that Bill Gates wants to put in me a chip is so narcissistic. Yes, and that my data will be out there. Yes, like it's not out there. It's in some hard disk. It's not out there. But what he says is that, and the suffering is totally in your head. It happens in your head. There is no real world consequence, unless, as I said, it's something to do with your personal life, to people you care or you know. It doesn't matter if, look, how prudish should I be? Yes, when 8 billion people know about it, and they, I don't care. It's totally irrelevant, but it is there in the irrelevance. Maybe a part of the suffering is there, the fear to be irrelevant.
We are almost out of time according to our weekly standards, but there's another practical side to this, which we've often discussed. Not only is my information irrelevant, but also it seems to me that what I can do to prevent my information being circulated is almost nothing. what could I do? I see many people complaining about this situation. I see many people worrying about this situation and discussing this situation. But from a practical point of view, is there anything they can actually do?
That's another. That's the final point. No. The answer is probably you can't. Yes, you can. You can choose one way. But listen, you are in the web. You are in social media. Most people are. Things are going around. The more you try to make it yours, the more you suffer. This is not something really that was yours from the beginning. Maybe your data is not yours. Who said is yours? Okay. I don't need to know what is my height if I don't know other people. To me, I am as tall as I need to be, or as short as I need to be. Doesn't make a difference.
I think we go back here to the differences within the types of data, right? Objective physical data as height or weight are on one side, and then we have data that has to do with our relationship to others.
There is two other situations. Imagine I don't want people to know about how much money I have if I live in Mexico or Brazil where they are kidnapping me. Yes. This is one example. So there is data that can make that
can make a difference.
And I'm sure somebody in Iran doesn't want them to know that they are watching porn or they're homosexuals. There is very dangerous data, but these are the exceptions. And in our world, in the Western world, the free world, I think this is again the box of tissues. Yes, once all the sufferings that we had are gone because we live in a world of abundance, suddenly privacy is an issue. And to make it a point, at the beginning, when the Israelis decided to give the data to Pfizer, almost nobody was complaining because that suffering was taken. Now that we have not learned to live with the virus, learn under this, we just live under the circumstances, and they are not that urgent. Now we have a problem with privacy.
I hadn't thought about it this way, but maybe to be worried about the privacy of my information online, it's good news in some sense. It means other tougher sufferings are already dealt with. And I'm not afraid I will not get a vaccine. That's what I can be afraid, that Pfizer will get information about my previous medical conditions. In a way, it's good news, so to speak.
Well, yes. Yes. And the answer is, if those are all your problems, but again, you suffer the same. Doesn't matter. If that person gets pain from the idea of somebody having the information about his pancreas,
he's in pain. Absolutely.
He's in pain. Like a pain in the leg, the same one.
Very well. We'll carry on with this and other subjects next time. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.